wife and I have been parishioners with the parish since 1998. Some of you have come on the architectural tours that we've been doing every fall for about 8 years now. In fact, there's one in April that we're going to do again, and my wife's going to lead that one. But it's been a pleasure to do that for the parish, and I think we're up to about 45, 50 people on the bus every year now, so that's a joy to be a part of that. But this is a treat for me to share my experience, because my faith is so much part of my work. I knew when I was in 7th grade that I wanted to be an architect. Didn't know specifically what type of architecture, but I had this love for art that gravitated toward architecture, and I remember telling a friend in lunch line in elementary school, I'm going to be an architect. I went to the University of Notre Dame School of Architecture, and they have a wonderful program, because the third year of the 5-year program is spent living in Rome. And that's very pivotal in my life, both personally, because that year in Rome, my faith came alive. I was a cradle Catholic, and my faith was always very important to me. But when you're surrounded by the churches and the beauty of Rome and the Catholic center that it is, everything came alive for me in my faith in a way that to this day drives my faith. And basically, it's still alive to this day, but I look back to Rome as the source of a lot of that inspiration, but also as an architect. As my faith came alive, also my love for church architecture came alive. And at the end of that year, I decided I want to design churches. Didn't know if there were firms that did much church work, but that was my passion. That was my prayer to God. How can I give back to you this passion and make it useful to the church that I love so much? So I graduated in 1992. And there weren't many jobs out there, and there certainly weren't many churches being built in 1992. So you took what you could get. I got some experience working in a few firms downtown Chicago, but just kept praying and just kept this goal in mind of doing church work. And moved to Washington, D.C. My wife was in the Navy, and in choosing to get married, I went where she went. And thankfully, she was stationed in the U.S. and not in Guam or some island in the Pacific. So we moved back in 1998 after she got out of the Navy, and that was when my prayers started to be answered. I joined a firm downtown that had just been awarded a project for Catholic Charities, a nursing home that had a chapel, a residence for retired priests. This is Holy Family Villa in Palos Park. And I was the project architect from day one on this project, and it was just an overflowing of God's grace that I had just never been so fulfilled in what I was doing. And especially the design of the chapels for these facilities. The priest chapel, the residence, the nursing homes chapel, and then ultimately a new monastery for the Poor Clare sisters, also in Palos Park. And to get to know the Poor Clares, to learn about the rule of St. Clare. So my faith was growing through my work in ways I never imagined, and way beyond the prayers I had prayed. It was just, God was giving more than I ever asked. But that experience of that firm only fueled my desire to do larger church projects. And I was with the firm about 7 years. I thought I might stay there the rest of my career. So in competing for larger church projects, I kept coming up against this name, Jaeger Nickola. To make a long story short, I found out the firm was 4 blocks from my house in Park Ridge, right across from the train tracks. And that the founding partner was in the process of retiring. So he had actively pursued me once we met, and he knew of my interests, to join the firm and succeed him, and ultimately to lead the firm into the future. But I, being a naive architect, wanted to start my own firm. I don't know, I've watched too much Brady Bunch and Mike Brady, but my wife was very influential at this point. And really was a source of wisdom and prudence. That Dave, we have children now. I'm not working because we have children, and you're going to start your own firm, and where's insurance going to come from, and all the practical issues. And here's a firm that's doing exactly what you want to do 4 blocks from our house. Are you crazy? I don't know if she asked me if I was crazy, but basically that was the message. And I did join the firm in 2005. And I became the president of the firm 2 years ago, and that's a story in itself. But I'm now leading the firm forward. And again, I never imagined being in this position to lead a firm. We had celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. And we have, gosh, some of the projects that you're familiar with, we've done 8 or 9 projects at the cathedral. We did the elevator addition that's right on State Street. We consolidated all the offices of the Archdiocese into the Quigley Archdiocesan Center. We did a new cathedral for the Syro-Malabar Diocese, which I never knew about, this Diocese of Indian Catholics from India. There's about 500,000 Syro-Malabar members in the US, in North America, and this is their cathedral. So I learned about a new side of our Catholic Church that I never knew about. And those are just a few of the stories and a few of the projects that have come from that. But one project that I really want to point out that where I had, I guess, extreme value, this is one of the questions that Jeff gave, was a small chapel. It only seats 50 people, but I'll just hold up this photograph. This project was very personal to me in a way, again, that I could never have imagined. I knew this is a new center of Opus Dei in Darien, and this is the chapel that's the heart of their facility. And this design captures so much of what my personal faith is, and also what they were looking for. And rarely does a project come together like that, where it's both personally what you want as an architect or as a person and what your client wants. And from day one, the initial sketches is this design. And usually we go through wads and wads of paper to develop our designs until we get the right solution that meets our client's needs and that we're happy with, and all the other issues that come to play in that. But this is one project where it just all came together almost on day one. Now, it took about 5 years to complete the project, and there's still missing artwork and things that they're still raising funds for. But this completed project really captured both my faith and my prayer life, and also what I prefer in a space where you're going to pray. The intimacy of it, the beauty of it, the didactic nature of it, in that the artwork and the architecture and the liturgical furnishings all kind of reinforce the idea that the Eucharist is the source and summit of our faith, and your eye goes right to the tabernacle. And so the treatment of the tabernacle, but also the intimacy of it, and the ability to pray when you're alone in the space, is something that I identified very much with early on. So I could go on and on about this project, but I just wanted to point that out as one specific example. And one, I guess, through that process, I also was humbled, especially at the completion of it. I learned and experienced humility in a way that also was more profound than probably any other project. When the local bishop came and dedicated this project, and the rite of dedication and the words of that dedication liturgy, it's just so profound and so beautiful. And here it's in a space that I designed. It's on an altar. I mean, they have a special rite for just dedicating an altar because of what an altar is. And I was in tears. But it was in a humbling way. It was way so far beyond me as an individual. But also, I recognize all the people that were part of the success of this project, from my own internal team at my office to all the consultants to the artisans that carved the marble that we designed, to the committee on the client side. There were, I think, 3 different priests that were involved at different points. But it all came together and realized this design in a way that was very seamless and profound, more so than other projects I've worked on over the years. So the humility that came from that was a pretty memorable experience. And I would say one thing in my career as a church architect that my experiences has taught me is trust and dependence on God, especially in the last few years with this economy. Our profession has been hit profoundly, and many firms have gone under, and we've come close to going under, but because when you're serving churches, these aren't the most profitable organizations, and sometimes I wonder, are we a non-for-profit? based on our work, but we have a great team. I have 10, we're a staff of 10 people, and half of us, actually everybody came to the firm because of this focus. And so it's an incredible experience of a collection of people of different faiths also. I didn't mention that, but we serve all faiths. So it's been an experience of ecumenism with other faiths and learning other faiths. That's been very profound as well. But the trust and dependence on God in our work, and trusting that what we're doing is important and it's worth sticking it out through these thin times. It looks like we're getting out of the thin times a little bit with more opportunities that are coming up. Patience has also been something that is very profound. As I mentioned, from my original inspiration in 1989 until 1998, I was doing commercial architecture. I was working on crate and barrel stores. I was, working on re-roofing projects for public schools. And it really taught me patience. In retrospect, that wasn't a long period of time, but it's something that stays with me to this day. Some advice I would offer, if anybody is interested in church design as a layperson, every parish has the liturgical committee that you can get involved with, or a building committee or facilities committee, especially if the parish is doing a church project. I would encourage you to volunteer for that. And if you are on the building committee, selecting an architect, not to say that you have to select us, but hire a firm or an architect that understands the faith and will design the project for you. A lot of projects impose their own design on their clients, even church architects. Certain church architects have a style that they do for almost every church project. Whereas we, and I believe this, are there to serve our clients and to design what our clients want. But they're very successful because that's what they wanted, and it's a realization of their vision for their church. So I think that's an important aspect in any architect that serves a church or a family or a company, that they realize the client's vision and not their own. Just some other ideas. There's a fair number of church documents that we have to comply with and understand that you may be interested if this is of interest to you. Built of Living Stones is a document that identifies all the requirements for a church design in the United States. It's a document issued by the U.S. Council of Catholic Bishops, and it goes into everything from the space to the liturgical furnishings and the layout. So that's a practical document. There's a wonderful book called Heavenly City that I've used for the architectural tours that Dennis McNamara has put together with photographs of all the most beautiful churches in Chicago, and I think there's at least 50 of every part from downtown to the suburbs. And it's a great document that summarizes the beauty of our churches and the wealth of that beauty that our archdiocese has. And his writings about the importance of those designs is very, very good as well. There's also a publication published at the University of Notre Dame called Sacred Architecture. It comes out quarterly, and it basically promotes and advertises beautiful church work that's happening, because you just don't see it much or hear about it much. And this is getting the word out that beautiful churches are being built again, and they're spread out over the U.S., but there is a movement towards returning beauty to our churches. Hope that was helpful. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
Did you do any work on St. Mary of the Angels or Holy Family restorations?
St. Mary of the Angels in the city?
Right.
No. We've worked on a master plan for the school, but I haven't actually worked on the church, but that's one of my favorite churches. In fact, in the church tours that I've done, that was the first church we went to, because that was so much represented, one of the beautiful churches of Chicago that harkens back to the churches of Italy and the Renaissance. So that's one of my favorites, personally.
Have you been to the chapel at St. Ignatius Parish in Rogers Park?
Yes, we toured that. I did do work there for the parish. It hasn't been executed yet, but did some design work there. That's beautiful, and we've toured that as well in our group. So, but you mentioned another one, Holy Family.
Holy Family on Roosevelt Road.
Oh yes, we have done work there, not in the church itself, but in the gathering space behind the church. But yes, yeah.
As a member of the St. Valentine's Guild, I've been on several of Dave's tours, maybe the last 4 or 5 years, and would recommend that to anybody who hasn't been on that they're very good. But just one point to bring out, I think it was the last one that we were on, where you were saying that, that you were tailoring to what the church wanted. And the one that I think you worked on was the
St. Mary of Vernon.
St. Mary of Vernon,
right.
And it was a very interesting transition.
It's a more contemporary design,
it was
right?
a contemporary design,
right.
But they were thinking of either rebuilding or expanding. And,
right.
and what you were able to do was the old church ended up being their vestibule, and a nice transition into what was the add-on of the
right.
new parish.
Right. Thank you. It was a very limited budget for a new church that seated probably 500 people. But yes, we converted the old church to a gathering space that led into the new church. And probably the most significant feature of the new church is that it has a glass wall behind the sanctuary that looks out into their beautiful grounds behind, which there's landscaping and trees and a pond. Very unique because your eye goes outside, and that's something I personally don't, prefer because it's just almost distracting. But it's a little distracting, but that's what they wanted.
That's what they wanted, and
right.
It was a real nice, interesting use of their old space too. I mean,
right.
They opened that up to, do all kinds of gatherings now in the vestibule side.
Right. Right. Thank you.
Have you ever been to Our Lady of Tahoe?
I have not. Our Lady of
This whole one side of the church is all glass. So the altar is right here, and the glass is behind it, and you're looking at the snow and the trees and all of that. Is that consistent with the book on the requirements for churches?
So describe it again.
Right behind the altar, as if right behind this altar is a huge, the whole wall is glass.
Right, right.
And so you're looking right out into it's not a countryside because it's right near Lake Tahoe, but it's very pretty with the trees and...
Well, the first question I would ask is, where is the tabernacle?
Tabernacle's right on the altar.
So as long as the tabernacle is in a prominent place, it doesn't have to be in the center according to the guidelines, but it has to be in a prominent place. So yeah, there's flexibility in the design of churches. So they can be contemporary as long as the key elements of altar, tabernacle, the pulpit or ambo are treated in a dignified way, in an appropriate way for the liturgical layout. So, yes.
Are there many church projects under consideration right now?
There are. We have a number of designs pending. A lot of them are additions and renovations, like gathering space additions or school renovations. But we just finished a master plan for a new church for a Southside African-American Catholic parish, St. John de La Salle, on Martin Luther King Drive. They're trying to build a new church because their church was meant to be a gym and they never got the money to build the new church. So they're trying to convert their church to the gym it was meant to be for the neighborhood. And so they have an appropriate place to worship, and they're obviously raising funds. It's probably going to be a while. But that's one example. Interviewed last week for a new church in the St. Augustine Diocese, and it's going to be named after John Paul II. So again, these new Catholic churches are spread throughout the U.S., but there is I guess a growth in certain parts of the country, mostly in Texas and in the southeast, I'm sorry. The Catholic population is growing, especially with the Hispanic population. So there is an increase in demand for new churches in certain parts of the country.